All right, and with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So hi, everyone, and welcome back to another MassMEDIC webinar. My name is Anna King, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a marketing coordinator for MassMEDIC, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you for such an important conversation. For those of you joining who may be visually impaired, I can be described as a white woman with brown hair wearing a navy blue top. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available on our MassMEDIC YouTube channel after the event. We also have a Q&A function in the chat, so make sure to drop any questions that you may have there. I'd also like to take a minute just to welcome everyone to our event and say thank you to MedTech Color for their partnership. And another big thank you to all of our awesome speakers for being here today. So if you're not familiar with MassMEDIC, we're a membership-based trade association for the medical device industry, and we work to support our ecosystem in New England and beyond through connection, education, events like this, advocacy, and awareness. And most importantly, MassMEDIC is dedicated to the long-term success of MedTech. And to bring more innovation, to bring new life-saving advancements and technologies forward, we need to make sure that MedTech is a place for everyone. And that's what our Why MedTech campaign is all about. So in collaboration with the state of Massachusetts last year, we launched Why MedTech. It's a multimedia branding campaign to increase awareness in the MedTech industry. And since then, we've been collecting and sharing the whys from different industry leaders. Our mission is to inspire those outside of MedTech to realize the fulfilling and life-changing opportunities that this industry has to offer. So creating awareness is just kind of the first step. We're developing Why MedTech as a one-stop shop of resources for both companies and employees looking to get into MedTech. So we continue to build collaborations across the state and throughout the industry that will support technical training and educational pathways, paying particular attention to some of the most underserved areas in our region. So it's a great time to get involved. You can learn more at whymedtech.com. And this is where I plug our social media accounts too. Please give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at whymedtech. So today you're going to hear from a fantastic group of panelists about how we can advocate for better representation of historically marginalized groups in MedTech. So I'm thrilled to be here for this discussion with such awesome MedTech leaders, and we hope you enjoy today's webinar. So with that, I'll pass it over to Ariana. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Anna. It is a pleasure to be with you all today. My name is Ariana Martin Del Campo, and I'm one of the program managers for MedTech Color. I can be described as a Hispanic woman with slick black brown hair, and I'm wearing a beige cardigan. And MedTech Color is a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to advance the representation of persons of color in the medical device industry. And we're really grateful to be able to partner with organizations like MassMEDIC and participate in initiatives such as the Why MedTech campaign to drive our mission forward. And before we get started, I'd like to just give a quick overview of our major programs, and I'll be brief because I know we want to bring out our speakers. But we have three major programs which also help to drive our mission forward. Our first is our Collaborative Community, which is a volunteer program that is designed to increase representation and participation of Black and Brown individuals in clinical trials and medical device development. And we are always looking for new volunteers to join our community. So if you are interested in this program, please visit our website to learn more. We also host an annual pitch competition in the spring of each year, focused on African American and Hispanic startup founders in the medical device, digital health, and diagnostic space. We are gearing up to host our fourth annual pitch competition in March of 2024. And our last program is an annual networking breakfast that we hold each fall in conjunction with the AdvaMed MedTech Conference. And this is an annual gathering of our community where we're able to showcase the diverse leadership in the industry and also strengthen our relationships within the community. And I'd like to just quickly highlight both our pitch competition and our networking breakfast, as we have some exciting activity coming up for both programs. Our 4th annual pitch competition, as I mentioned, is coming up in March, and we will be opening applications for that next week on August 31st. They will be open until November 10th, 2023. And our annual networking breakfast is also coming up soon on October 9th. It'll be held in Anaheim, California. So if you have any questions or would like to get involved, I'll place some information in the chat. But without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and bring out and introduce our moderator of today's discussion, Kwame Ulmer. He is the founder and executive director of MedTech Color. And Kwame, we are really grateful to have you here today. And I'll go ahead and pass it over to you to kick off the discussion.
Thank you so much, Ari. I'm delighted to join you today for this conversation to learn from practitioners and thought leaders around this important topic. I'm Kwame Ulmer. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I can be described as a Black man with a blue blazer. At this point, I would invite the panelists to join us by turning their cameras on and ask them to let us know their name, their pronouns, and a brief description, and we will begin the conversation. Do you want to start, Sarah?
Yes, I'm happy to. Thank you so much for having me. Huge thank you to MassMEDIC and to MedTech Color for today's invitation. And thank you all for taking the time. This is a very important topic. And so it says a lot that you're taking an hour of your day to engage with us in this conversation. I lead our inclusion and diversity department at ResMed, and ResMed is a global med tech digital health company that focuses on treating sleep apnea. 1 in 9 of us have some form of obstructed breathing, and so we make the CPAP machines that help create, the clear pipeways for us to be able to sleep at night. And I help us think about the patient. I help us think about the product, the packaging, accessibility, as well as the people practices.
Outstanding. Netta, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Kwame, and thank you, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with you all. And ditto everything Sarah said about taking time to have this conversation with us. So I'm Netta Hanafi. I am the Senior Vice President for Regulatory Strategy at Veranex, and I'm also a co-founder of MedTech Color, along with Kwame and Vanessa and a number of us. And at Veranex, we're a service provider. So our goal is to help companies get their products to market in the least burdensome manner. And I oversee the regulatory piece. So understanding what the product is, how it works, and how it's actually going to the benefit for patients is a real critical piece of getting your product to market. And once it gets to market, making sure it stays safe and effective. So that's a aspect that I think why we're here, and who creates those products, who designs them, are we really centering around the patient, really speaks to the need for diversity and inclusion across the spectrum within the medtech space. So I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
Excellent. Tiffany.
Hello, everyone. I am Tiffany Somerville, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the Global Vice President and Head of Human Resources with Sherlock Biosciences. And we engineer biology to deliver products so people can access answers and control their health decisions. So it's about access and empowerment. And I am very, very happy to have been invited to this wonderful discussion with this magnificent panel.
Well, that's amazing. And thank you so much. I'm excited to get started. And we're going to warm up with a 3-part question. So I'll go slow. First, where are you from? Second question, how did you get introduced to this industry? And the third question, where are you headed? Where will Tiffany, Sarah, and Netta be 5 years from now? On a beach, or running a major company, or something else? All right, Netta, you started giggling. Can you go first?
Great questions. Well, thank you. I should have fully introduced myself. So my pronouns are she, her, And for anyone who's visibly impaired, I'm wearing a blue and white jumpsuit and have curly long hair. Right now, I reside in San Jose, California, but I'm originally from Sudan, North Sudan. Unfortunately, Sudan is going through a major upheaval right now, and hopefully we'll have a country to call home soon. So that's where I'm from. Your second question is, where will I be?
What got you into the industry? How did you
what got me into the industry? Great question. So what got me, I think, so initially I wanted to be a clinician, because if you stem from anywhere in Africa or the Middle East, you're either going to be a doctor, you're going to be an engineer, or you're going to be a lawyer. And mine was a doctor, and it was this sense of wanting to serve and help people. I did unfortunately not get the grades to get into med school, although I had 3 acceptances in the UK. But then I went into biomedical engineering, and a number of steps led me into working with a small startup back in the DMV area, Maryland. And then I transitioned to the FDA and spent over 12 and a half years there working in service. FDA's mission is to promote and protect public health. And that really resonated with the overall goal. And it's kind of doing it in a bigger impact rather than one individual patient at a time. Hopkins' motto is saving lives millions at a time. So I think that's why we're all here within MedTech. And in 5 years' time, I hope I am surrounded by diverse members of my team, leaders, really making an impact, helping clients and sponsors get really meaningful products to market that are addressing the unique needs of patients in some manner or form, and not just within the US, globally.
Outstanding. Can I invite Tiffany to go next?
Sure. So I am a native New Yorker and proud of it. So that's where I am from. And how did I get here? Is that part 2?
How'd you get into the industry? Yes.
The industry. So I actually wanted to perform. I am a singer. I've been singing on stage since I've been since 11 years old, and wanted to perform, and had to make a decision in college. I studied communications and marketing. Being a starving artist was not something that I wanted to do, and joined the marketing team of a publishing company in New York City. A friend of mine was in human resources, and we would talk about our day, and she'd complain about, the employees and so forth. And it sounded very interesting to me. And so I said, I think I do very well in human resources. And I quit my job. 2 weeks later, got my first role in HR at Hermes, which is fantastic for me, as I am an MVP shopper. And then started within the pharmaceutical industry well over 20 years ago, where the life sciences industry, where I've loved, because I've been able to make an indirect impact on the lives of so many patients within multiple areas, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, and now being able to being that change agent to help folks be able to have access to medical devices, I think is, and diagnostics, is just along the lines of just being able to help all people, which is what I love to do. And where do I see myself in 5 years? Well, I see myself being a chief people officer, continuing to make impact upon a wonderful company, and being able to be a mentor to a bunch of folks, whether they're coming out of school, in school, retired. I love to help folks and just, have those conversations. So that's me.
All right. Well, I'm so glad I learned that about you being a singer. And Sarah, I know you're going to tell me you were born thinking about sleep apnea, right? That's just 100% how you got started.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So, it's a tough act to follow behind Neda and Tiffany. So I'm actually North African. I come from sunny North Africa, from Algeria, but now I reside in sunny San Diego, Southern California. I I'm a student of politics and international affairs, and I started my career in refugee camps. And I would help with like clinics and health assessments and socioeconomic assessments. And then I went into the corporate industry world where I got to actually support the US Navy, and I was doing a pharmacy operations project. And so it's funny, as I look back on my career, there's this health that's always been interwoven through international development. I've done media, I've done democracy development, but health and, access to work, access to homes are always things that come up for just basic human rights. I didn't know anything about ResMed. And so I'm going to actually answer number 2, because I got a phone call from a recruiter and I was like, who's ResMed? I'm like Googling it as they're talking to me. I had no idea who ResMed was, which is really sad, actually. But I've learned a lot about sleep and sleep hygiene, the health disparities and inequities in sleep and access to sleep care. And so I'm really passionate now about this. I've been in tech the last 9 years on the people side in the inclusion and diversity space, but it's been exciting now through ResMed, learning more about, patient care and the inequities in healthcare. And where am I headed? Probably the Maldives or Seychelles. No, I'm joking. 5 years from now, I'm kind of following Tiffany in the sense where I definitely see myself continuing to drive impact, whether it's industry or leading a nonprofit. I'm very passionate about the nonprofit side. I started my career in nonprofits. We've got a lot in San Diego, and so I do see myself, whether I go down that ride or government, I could see that happening for myself. But regardless, I'm married to purpose and I'm married to impact, and I feel very dead inside if I'm not driving some sort of social change. And so I know that as long as I'm healthy and I'm able, that's the goal, is to continue impacting and driving better lives.
Well, that's exciting. You covered a bit of the next question, the more meaty question that I think Netta and Tiffany have a point of view about is young leaders. I'm sure many of the participants on this webinar are early in their career. And I'll start with Netta, your thoughts on keys to attracting young leaders into MedTech.
It's a great question and a very important one, right? So at MedTech Color, one of our philosophies is if you see it, you can be it. And then if you're really designing for change, you need to design from that lived experience, the understanding of the pain points and the communities that you're designing that product for. So that you design it in a meaningful manner. So the upstream thinking of designing with inclusivity in mind. How does that happen? By having people at all stages within the product development life cycle be representative of the very diverse patient population that we're developing our solutions to impact in a meaningful way. So I think it's the fact that we have to recognize that at all levels, especially leadership. And then you have to realize that you need leaders that look like the patient populations we're attracting. And I think MedTech offers so many opportunities. You don't have to come from a STEM background. You can come, you have Sarah and Tiffany, one wanted to be a singer, from the arts background, the politics background. You can come from traditional, STEM specialities, but I think there's so much that needs to be thought about in a holistic manner, that there's something for everyone. And if service and improving outcomes and being challenged is a space that excites you, I think MedTech is that space. And how we draw that talent in, I think, is by revealing all the different opportunities that you can plug into MedTech that can meet also what drives you as an individual and what you're looking for. I mean, Sarah said she's passionate about impact, right? And that's what she's married to. And I think there's so many, and she comes from an NGO background, but still finds herself in MedTech. So I think just the diversity on this panel shows you that you can find something that drives you in MedTech. And we as leaders, HR folks need to be looking for that. And I think Sarah and Tiffany can definitely speak to their practices to actually implement that.
Yeah, Tiffany, what do you think about that? What do you see as winning strategies to attract Gen Z?
Sure. So attracting Gen Z, looking at making sure that there is a path forward for growth. They're looking for growth. They are looking for folks that they can see, so being represented. I've heard several times from folks that we've hired, as well as folks that we have not hired, candidates that we haven't hired, who said, listen, I looked at your website and seeing you on the executive leadership team inspired me, and seeing so many women inspired me. And these are candidates from all different backgrounds. So Gen Z, they're looking at how companies are being represented, their leadership teams at the top. And then that gives them some insight in terms of where their possibilities for them. Also creating programs for them that's interesting to them. So doing your pulse surveys and really listening to and trying to be creative from our perspective, being creative in terms of what can we bring them? Are we bringing them programs that can speak to fertility access? Are we bringing programs that can about daycare, wellness? So really listening to and tapping in to different programs that would also be quite attractive. Having hybrid work models. That's something that is also very, very important to them. We've seen with the pandemic, right? 3 years, 2.5, 3 years that we've been able to do this. And now companies are saying, hey, now it's time to come back. Gen Z is saying, hey, we've been able to do this for so long. If my company says I have to come back, then I'm going to look at another company. So really being innovative and competitive, and looking at and laser focused on what they're interested in. That's how we've done that.
You had me at work at home. Before we go to the next question, Sarah, do you come across these issues in your role at ResMed? I know you always can offer great weather in San Diego, but what else do you talk about when attracting Gen Z?
So ResMed's located in 41 countries. And so we do have, we're hiring around the world. And one of the things I've been focusing on this year is ageism and age disruption. One huge element of diversity that we're talking about is that age disruption. We're 5 generations in the workplace. And Gen Z is coming in, Tiffany, to your point, right? Like they want more flexibility. They want things their way. They want it done. And that's great. That's every generation comes in and they push the culture, they push the needle, they push their asks. So one thing we've been really thinking about and I'm implementing is a reverse mentorship program, really thinking through how can everyone learn from one another, right? And so that legacy knowledge with that brand new energy coming right out of college, how can we learn from one another and really make it a collective experience? We're also focusing on a lot of different programs, different retention programs, like a buddy system is really popular, a regular mentorship program within your own department. We have an allyship program as well, that you can find an ally for anything, whether you're a parent, whether you went on leave, whether you're relocating. So really trying to create ways, even in a hybrid, flexible world, that new generations as well as legacy employees are finding new ways to engage. And we're constantly innovating in the inclusion space.
So now the question is framed in the negative, but I'm sure you can respond in any way you deem most appropriate. But let's talk about the people that exit MedTech. Do they exit? And what has kept more advanced leaders in MedTech in your experience? So 2-part question. Why are people leaving the industry, particularly minorities or women, and what has kept more senior leaders in MedTech? Anyone want to take that?
Happy to go really first. I think I'm really glad that you specified people, because when you look at data, usually there's the middle where women tend to leave, especially in STEM fields, and MedTech falls under that umbrella. The women leave in that messy middle due to a couple of main points, where it's promotion, getting passed up for promotion, Also, their pay is not as competitive, and the flexibility is not there. And so I'm sure there are other things, but those are kind of the three main reasons why women are not advancing. And then there's also bias and unconscious bias sometimes in some workforces that we have to acknowledge. So there's the element there. There's also the sense of belonging. And I'm glad you also called out people, underrepresented minorities, that sense of belonging. I've personally heard it from so many people, just like, I don't feel good here. That place I'm going to has more diversity or more representation in leadership. And I love that, Tiffany, you brought that up. If you don't see it there, people will leave. Like that story at Twitter from years ago was huge. There was a Black engineer that was hired and they left because there were no other Black engineers there. So the effort to build diversity really fell apart because there was no community to support that person. So I think, senior leaders can stay because they've already worked up and they're already at a certain level, but it's really hard when you're in the middle.
Yeah, that messy middle. Tiffany, do you have a reaction to that? Have ERGs worked in your experience to retain people of color or other approaches that you think are winning?
Sure. I absolutely believe, first of all, that we need to do a better job at exposure to our industry for some marginalized groups, right? And some underrepresented groups. So there you have that. There is a category where they don't know, like, if I am not going to be a scientist, I'm not going to be a scientist. So I have no role in this industry. Well, of course you do, because you can be in HR, regulatory, commercial, marketing. There's so many finance, so many other areas where you can have an impact in this industry. And so once you get the folks and the exposure, once you get people into the industry, so you check the box, we've gotten these folks into the industry. If you're not engaging them through their life cycle, then you're going to lose them. So it's not just checking the box that we're bringing in the folks. You need to engage them and make sure that they have the same opportunities as their peers and colleagues. And if they're seeing that they don't, and they don't have a safe space to say, like, hey, what about me? They're going to leave. They're going to leave. And I will say millennials and Gen Z will certainly, they're going to leave, where, my generation, I know you all thought that I was Gen Z, but I'm actually, I'm a baby boomer, so I'm not actually. I'm Gen X, but we will stay longer to say, hey, we'll stick it through. These generations, later generations, they're not doing that. They're making moves. 2-3 years, they're going to give you a chance, and then they're going to go on to their next opportunity, and they're more open to saying, okay, it didn't work in this industry, let me try another industry, which is why we really have to engage these folks.
Oh, go ahead, Netta, please.
No, sorry, I was just going to add, you heard some critical aspects there, the belonging, the engaging. I'd add on the intentionality. I think Sarah and Tiffany spoke to policies or processes or strategies to keep people within and to really meet the people where they are. It's a bit like meeting patients where they are, right? And wanting to develop for their unique needs. And that's the same philosophy, I think, when it comes to attracting talent and keeping talent and giving them the opportunity to progress forward, the intentionality aspect. And I'll sound like a broken record, but to underscore it, if you don't see it, you can't believe it and you can't be it. So it really does start at the front. Visuals matter in this digital world, but words matter as well. And it's true. The first thing, even as a regulator, the first thing you do is go and look at the website, right? And who is represented there? Do I see myself in that group so that I want to join them? And then you join and then no one looks like you and no one understands where you come from. No one can relate to you. It's really not an environment that I might want to remain and stay. And that's where people go and find the environments that welcome them. Even now with the ability to work remotely, many Gen Zs or people of color, marginalized groups, don't want to go back into the office because they felt a lot of microaggressions, and now they don't have to deal with that. And those kind of wear on you as a person of color or a woman that prevent you from excelling. So I think there's you've heard so many great strategies that I'm like, oh, I want to come work for ResMed, or I want to go work with Tiffany, like that are trying to meet people, the employee, regardless of age, sex, gender, race, ethnicity, where they are, and create that community for them. And I think the community piece is really, really critical, and wants people to do their best work and stay there. And then just one other little bit, when we talk about medical devices, we're talking about multidisciplinary approaches, the need to have diverse perspectives and diverse expertise. Like you'll have your engineer, your clinician, your designer, your communicator for your marketing aspect. And that's the beauty of entering MedTech. You can meet you have an opportunity, and you don't have to stay in one place, because you can move and say, oh, well, this sounds interesting. Maybe I can sharpen the saw in this area. So I think it's the creating a community or environment where people can excel, can be, and you're giving them that prospect of moving forward.
So this is wonderful. We've started a bit personal, then we went macro. I like to go personal again, and personal in the sense of your journey as a professional. And I want you to think about a moment or an opportunity that was critical and had the biggest impact on your advancement. So chew on it a little bit for a few seconds, but what happened to get you from there to here in your journey in this industry? Sarah, can I start with you? And maybe you want to talk about the role DE&I played in your professional journey or not, but how would you respond to that question?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's always valuable to, hear how people grew along their journey. I've had a few turning points. I will say where there was a shift for me was when I was at Qualcomm prior to this. It's not a MedTech company. It makes the chips that power your phones. So it was a semiconducting company, but it was tech. And we had similar struggles when it comes to STEM and hiring and really thinking through diversity in the pipeline. But I'm actually going to talk about leadership and how important it is to have a leader that really empowers you and gives you opportunities. I don't feel like I got a lot of that over the course of my career. And I don't come from a culture where self-advocacy came so naturally. I really had to work on that over the course of my career. And then as I got older and I honed that voice, I was able to really exercise that. And I felt like I finally had a leader that wanted to hear my voice and really met me where I was at and pushed me to speak at more conferences, put me on stage at Qualcomm to do certain things, sent me to conferences, and gave me the budget to do a lot of impactful DE&I work, to be honest. And there was a lot of trust there. And that was really, really helpful because it showed me the lesson of self-advocacy, self-worth, as well as translating that to impact and translating that to practicing what I preach. I can't help communities move forward and women move forward and help us advance if I'm not role modeling that and seeing it for myself. So it was kind of a journey that was parallel.
So Netta, I want to turn to you next. As you reflect on your career, what were those critical events or opportunities that really propelled you forward?
People, right? We're all here because someone helped us or gave us a hand, or, Sarah, you said it supported or gave you an opportunity, right? I think there's a number of them, even just being at the agency. I was very young and I was new to it. And I remember one of my managers came to me, it was like late in the evening, and he said, I'm giving you an opportunity, Neda, to meet the commissioner. People work at the FDA for over 20 years and never get that opportunity. And he gave me a PMA, pre-market application, which is a class 3 high-risk device. And he said, you're going to be the lead reviewer for this, for a very controversial device area. And it did open the door and set me on that trajectory into leadership. But I think the point is, it's at every phase in your life, someone helped you out. And I think it's embracing that mentality and reaching back to give others opportunities as well to open doors. Because when you give them that opportunity, you don't know what they can do and can be. But I think for minorities or underrepresented populations, we're not given the opportunities and we're not born into opportunity. So how can we create that with intentionality? So for me, it's always been people. And then I think you reach a point, a crisis has to happen, or someone has to die, or there has to be some tragedy, some pain to cause people to wake up and say, it's time for change. George Floyd being one, when there's been all these tragedies, but it takes, you reach a tipping point, right? And I think if we all look back, there's probably been a tipping point where you're like, yeah, no, this is going to propel me into the next piece. But I'd love to hear Tiffany. She's smiling away, so I'm sure she has a lot.
Let's hear it.
No, I have to say, I am an only child of two magnificent parents who grew up in the 40s, Jim Crow, Alabama, deep Alabama. And my mother was an executive. She's retired. They're both still with us at Xerox. And my father, an entrepreneur. And so this is what living my life. You know, I went to work with my mother and father before Bring Your Child to Work Day was, you know, a thing. And so when you say if you can't see it, you can't be it. What's on loop for me is representation matters. So I've seen that all my life. So it was just instilled in me. And my career journey has been such where I've had privilege and opportunity to be open and have some great opportunities. But quite frankly, when I was in the companies, I wasn't engaged. I had to forge my own way where my peers and colleagues were given access that I weren't given. And I had to, you know, forge my own way. So it's some sort of internal fortitude that I had that said, I know that I'm meant to do very impactful things and setting a course to do that for myself. And then of course, being extremely intentional about making sure that I champion and advocate for folks and make sure that I mentor folks so that they don't have to forge their own way, that they do have mentors and advocates on the back end. So, you know, it's not a sad story to me, it's a victorious, empowered story where you're not gonna hold me down. And I actually sometimes chuckle to say, listen, I'm here because of how I'm wired, how I was raised, and I'm always gonna execute quality. And, you know, the companies that I've done so, and hopefully, and I feel like I've left a really great mark and continue to have folks where I am paying it forward. That is very, very important.
So this is great. We've talked about early stage career folks, more senior career folks. We actually have a question in the chat about transitioning when you're mid-career. But before we go to that, Tiffany talked about mentoring, and I want to double click on that. Nothing like a good corporate cliche. Let's go a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
What mentoring practices have the biggest impact? And I would love for all of you to give your thoughts on, this is how you do mentoring right. This is what it really looks like when it's 100, as the Gen Z say.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to start?
I mean, I can certainly start here. A mentor who is going to say, you did this well, give specific examples in terms of what you've done well so they can mirror that behavior. And the mentor to say, listen, here was a bump and here's an area of development. And so let's work together on this. So giving giving specificity is really important because that's how you mirror or correct behavior. And I've had some great mentors that have done that for me, and just being there to say, hey, can I run this by you? What do you think? What should I do? That to me, those are the things: listening, specificity, and again, access, being accessible to folks.
Now, what's a good mentor relationship look like?
Was that me? Sorry, I want to make sure.
Oh, that was for Netta.
Oh, sorry.
Then I'll go to you, Sarah. Yeah.
Okay, I'll follow my rules because I'm like, oh, go ahead, Sarah. I think it's interesting. I mean, mentorship's important, but I'd also like to say sponsorship is really important. So who is saying your name and saying, you need to consider this person for this opportunity when you're not in that room? And who's kind of opening those doors? So there's that piece that's really huge. And I think leaders, and even at any level, you can be a sponsor. You don't have to be a leader or, you know, an executive to do that. But obviously, if you're in those rooms and environments where you can influence, that's really where it counts. The mentorship piece is actually a great one. My approach and where I found it helpful is when they ask you questions you haven't thought about. Like their goal is, it's a bit like therapy, I sometimes think. You're not answering the question for you. Like you ask me, oh, should I do this or should I do that? Well, it's not my life and it's not my choice. Let's talk about it. Let's walk through it. So I think it's about asking questions to lead them to the answer, you know, so that they are brought into what they're doing and their decisions. And exactly, Tiffany, you know, I think you got to make mistakes to get better. You pick yourself up and you have someone there kind of supporting you, saying it's okay. You can still do it. So I think it's very much dependent on the person. But I loved, Sarah, what you said, that the early on, like creating these programs that allow for cross mentorship, peer-to-peer mentorship. It doesn't always have to be someone above. Learning, I feel like we can always be learning. And I learn a lot from those young'uns, as you put it, Kwame, and vice versa. So I think there's the beauty of being open to learning just in general. And and kind of challenging the status quo of what a mentor should look like, right? It should be what you want it to be as well.
Sarah, you talked about this reverse mentoring. What do you think really works at the systemic level at ResMed?
In terms of mentorship overall, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mentoring.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of accountability and structure. In order for people to really engage and kind of take a program seriously and like have a mentor. So I can ask Kwame to be my mentor, but then if there isn't really a structure around it, I might reach out casually every 6 months or just say you're my mentor, but not really engage you. What I find is that it's so important to have a program around it. Hey, this is a 6-month thing. You touch base every third Friday of the month. You tell your manager about it, you check in, so your your manager knows that you're in a mentorship program and asks how it's going. So what I've done over the course of my career, we did it at ResMed and done it at Qualcomm, is have like an accountable start date and end date, and then you can continue with that mentor. And it's so important to understand what it is you want. Are you looking for a sponsor, a teacher, a champion, an advocate? There are different kinds of mentors depending on what your personal professional goals are. And so that's really important, is don't go into a mentorship just to have a mentor and say you have one. Go into it because you know what it is, how you want to grow and what you want to glean from it. And there you'll be able to align with the right mentor. And then that mentor also will know how to guide. And that's where the accountability piece comes in, right? Is knowing, okay, in 6 months, here's how the mentor is going to measure success, and here how the mentee is going to measure success. And you can keep that relationship going. But having that structure is really important, and having that feedback loop back to the program organizer is really important as well.
You know, we've covered early stage issues, early professional development issues, people later on. And we have a question from the participants. One is to comment on mid-career recruiting during or not the change of one's career. So I'd love to open it up to anyone who wants to jump in, but what about that mid-career person, the messy middle, Sarah? What happens to keep person moving forward?
I mean,
is it going back to get your MBA? Is it a sabbatical? I'm curious about what ways mid-career folks may transition.
I think this question is so important. There are different ways to kind of go about answering this. It also depends on the field. number one is like leverage your network. It's really important that you kind of build your brand online, set up informationals. If there's a certain place you want to work or a role that you're interested in learning more about, but knowing what you want is very important mid-career, because recruiters can tell if you are not aligned with what you want. I've seen this myself engaging with candidates where they're like, oh, I'm looking for a PM job, or I just want to enter tech. And that's just vast in the industry world. You have to have an understanding of what your strengths are and what kind of roles you know that you'll be good at and where career trajectory, and be very honest with the recruiters about that, and leverage the recruiters for help as well, in terms of how to prepare for an interview, what to look like, what the company looks like, what the culture looks like, all of that. So it is a two-way street mid-career. Don't just take any job. Make sure that you're taking a job that aligns with your values and aligns with your career trajectory. But it is harder. And I know I've been there. I had something happen in my life and I was out of the workforce for 9 years. It was very hard. It was unforgiving getting back in, and you have to have a very strong talk track and build your brand and understand what it is that you're good at and be able to market that.
Netta, do you want to go next? What about mid-career? I know that was a while ago, but how do people navigate that? I'm not trying to age you, Netta,
Kwame, what are you saying, mate?
I'm saying you're an OG. That's what I'm saying. What do you think?
Really, it's a really important question. And it's going to vary based on if you're female, where you are in your life journey, what race and ethnicity you are. Like, there's just so many aspects there. And what can you truly afford to do? What are your responsibilities to allow you to transition? I think what I would say, and especially for women, is don't doubt yourself. I think we always, I know we hold ourselves back and we can do a lot more, and we won't put our name forward for that direct VP position because we think, oh, I need another 10 years under my belt to qualify. Where your whippersnapper young boy over there will put his head in with a year of experience, and feel that he's entitled to it. So I think it's leaning into knowing your strength, as Sarah was saying, and what value you bring, and being able to articulate that in a manner that's going to resonate with the hiring manager, but just challenge yourself as well to kind of move yourself to the next level. You've probably more than earned it. You're probably more than experienced and qualified for it. And it's just having the belief in yourself to put yourself out there. And that's where, again, the sponsorship piece comes through, the having a mentor that can give you that little nudge, or team members that can help support you. I think we all need a hand to hold. But try it out. You never know. And then I think Sarah said it really well, the informational interviews, just talking to people, learning about why they like where they are, what drives them, what are some of the challenges, so that you also go in with open eyes. I think it's really important to be informed about your next step and what you want to do, and even make the choice. Sometimes maybe you're okay just staying where you are. That might ultimately, your informational gathering process may ultimately lead you to say, I'm actually quite happy here. Or it may propel you to say, no, this is really what I want. And you're intentional and you're really leaning into it and setting yourself up for success there. I'd love Tiffany's thoughts because I know she's unmuted.
Yeah, so I definitely believe that you should, start making lists of, this is what I do well. This is what, areas that I can improve upon. This is what drives me. And then, I think that if you're talking about somebody that wants to, do a career shift, I feel like when you're in mid-career, you're making these lists, you can see the visual of this to say, okay, how can I use my transferable skills in another function or another area? If it's somebody who's looking to get to that next step, they feel like they need some help and boost to get to the next step. I would say recruiters are reaching out to people all the time. More often than not, women will not take a call because they'll just say, well, I'm content with my current role. Men will take calls And I will always say, take a call, listen to someone, even if your intention is not to go for that role, you're listening to what's out there. You're getting, you're understanding trends and what's happening out in the workplace beyond your current company. So this is giving you data, again, so that you can leverage this data to say, okay, this was a great opportunity, and maybe I can, get a better title or so forth at a new job, or this is helping me to really map out what it is that I'm interested in, and I may have these opportunities within my current company, and I'm going to have a conversation with my manager or HR. So it's really about being open to opportunity and listening. I think that these are things that folks can do when they're in that middle, that hump, right? That middle, messy middle, as you called it.
Yeah, I know it's not trademark, but I love it. Sarah said messy middle. We're at the point in our conversation where we would love questions from the participants on this webinar. The lines are open. We had one great question about mid-career, but that's where we are. If you have a question, please feel free to type it in. We're going to respond to the best of our ability in the remaining minutes we have for this conversation. And as we're being patient and open to questions from the audience, I would love to get your thoughts about actionable advice for a person early on in their career, mid-career, or later on. If you had to give someone at any stage that you think is most critical, do this. Is it think about more education? Is it ask for advocacy? Is it change a job because you've been thinking about it for 3 years, trusting your intuition? What is that piece of advice you would give someone at the stage that you want to highlight? I could tell Sarah's contemplating, but I feel like Tiffany is ready to go. Tiffany, do you want to start?
Sure. I think that I would say, so I have my daughter's 23, and she, has been in corporate America now for just over a year. And I would say, and what I've said to her is, always build relationships. You build relationships, you're growing a network. And when you grow that network, you're able to tap into your network for many different reasons, a gamut of reasons, and they will be thinking of you. When you're at a new role, connect with HR, connect with your HR folks, because it's building relationships. And when people leave companies, they'll remember you. I promise you. You continue to hone in on and build relationships. Have informational interviews with someone outside of your team. If you ask a question, the worst that can happen is that they can say no and they don't have time. I doubt they'll do it. And she's done this, and her network is better than mine, more impressive than mine. But giving young folks that empowerment to know that it doesn't matter what level you can, someone's there to impart upon you information. And sometimes you just have to ask and just have that comfort and to know that I can just ask, right? So that's what I would say. And that's what actually I say to my daughter.
That's great. Netta, what do you think? What advice would you give that a person can act upon at any stage you think is important?
I love that, relationships, right?
Yeah.
Tiffany, for me, someone told me, a senior leader at the agency, she said to me, you know what, Neda? No is the opening bid. And I'll never forget that. How do you turn a no into a yes? And there's ways to do that, right? And it's having the courage to ask the questions, to your point. But I do think, first impressions count. Someone makes an impression about you within the first 8 seconds, I believe, or something like that. So that really does matter, how you show up, and then your follow up to what you say you're going to do. And then to your point, even Kwame, now, when you just said, oh, we'll answer the question to the best of our ability. So even if you can't answer a question, being able to say, I don't know, but I'm going to go find out, right? It's okay to not know. The whole point, like if any leader will tell you, you want to be in a room surrounded by a lot smarter people than you. You don't want to, you never want to be the smartest person in that room. And I definitely am never the smartest person in a room, but you're surrounded by a group who just elevates. And I really believe in that team approach, which goes back to the relationships, the community, the network. Another buzzword, you know, your network is your net worth. And it really is true. I don't think any of us would be here if it's not because of our network, right? And the people in our space and who you allow in your space, who's really kind of rooting for you and your success. So, I mean, it's repeating what everyone just said, but I think it's definitely leaning into the people around you who can help you move forward.
Sarah, we're winding down, and I would love your thoughts on that one question, and then I'm going to turn it over to our host to close us out. But Sarah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely echo Tiffany Neda. I will add, it shows if you're not doing something you love. It's so important for you to be aligned with who you are. And so make sure that you know, my biggest advice is find what you're good at and find what you're passionate about. And there's a way to mirror the two, definitely. And so I think that's really important to keep in mind as you build your network, as you build relationships. You'll show up more authentically and you'll show up happier when you're doing something that you care about and something that you enjoy doing.
Well, it's been a delight. And I think that's a wonderful way to end such a purpose-driven industry with that call to act in your purpose. With that, I'm going to invite Anna King and Ariana Martin Del Campo back to close us out. And again, thank you to our panelists for a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, that was so great. Thank you all so much. What a great discussion. And thank you to MedTech Color for your partnership. So to learn more about the Why MedTech campaign and how you can get involved, please visit whymedtech.com. But with that, thank you, and I'll pass it over to Ariana.
Yes, I'll just go ahead and echo what Anna and Kwame said. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to MassMEDIC for this opportunity to partner. And thank you all for the audience today for listening to this great conversation and supporting MedTech Color. I'll just go ahead and highlight one last time our annual networking breakfast that is coming up soon. If you are attending the MedTech conference or in the Southern California area and would like more information, please feel free to reach out to us. And a great segue to a lot of the themes discussed in this conversation, and a big reason as to why we host the pitch competition every year. But our applications are opening next week, and we're happy to be starting the process a little bit early this year and give more time for great startups to apply. So again, if you have any questions, please visit our website. I dropped a contact email in the chat as well if you have any specific questions or ideas for how you can get involved and engage with our organization. But with that, I'll go ahead and wish everyone a great rest of the day, and thank you all again.